Want to see more cool videos on our channel? We do, so press this bell and enable to send notifications.
Mysteries just pull us in. We like to read about them, watch shows about them, and try to solve them. As a whole, mankind has always strove to make the unknown known. As the years have gone by, we've found new answers for some of the mysteries, puzzles, and conundrums of our world. It's unlikely that history will ever reveal all of its secrets to us, but at least we've managed to make a few more dents in our collective ignorance. Number 7. The Kidnapping of Carlina White. On August 4th, 1987, Carlina White, just 19 days old, was rushed to New York's Harlem Hospital Center. Suffering from an infection and high fever, Carlina was admitted but disappeared during an early morning shift change. Witnesses described a heavy-set woman dressed like a nurse who had been hanging around the NICU and who left shortly after the shift change. But because the hospital's video surveillance wasn't working, nobody knew what she looked like. The incident was the first non-parental infant abduction in New York history. A reward was set up for White's return, but she was never found. The parents sued the hospital, won a settlement, and eventually split up. The case remained cold for decades. For the next 23 years, Carlina was raised under a new name by Connecticut resident Ann Petway. After becoming suspicious of her mother's inability to provide birth documents, as well as the lack of resemblance between the two, Carlina began researching on the internet and found baby photos that resembled her likeness as an infant. She called the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and was reunited with her birth parents in 2000. Petway disappeared, but eventually turned herself in and pleaded guilty to kidnapping. She's currently serving a 12-year sentence. Number 6. The Missing Swiss Couple. One day, Marcelin Dumoulin and his wife Francine went to a meadow near the Swiss village of Chandelin to feed and milk their cows. They weren't seen again for 75 years. The Dumoulins disappeared on August 15, 1942. They were finally found in July 2017 when a shrinking glacier uncovered their frozen bodies. The ice had preserved the remains, which were found with their belongings and their identity papers intact. Subsequent DNA tests positively confirmed that the bodies were those of Marcelin and Francine Dumoulin. It appears as though the couple fell into a crevice where they remained hidden away for decades. Once the San Fleuron Glacier started receding, it finally revealed their bodies. According to regional authorities, this sort of thing is not unheard of. Because of climate change, receding glaciers have regularly unveiled the frozen remains of people who disappeared years or even decades ago. Number 5. The ghost ship Mary Celeste. In 1872, the Mary Celeste was spotted off the Azores in the Atlantic, completely intact and undisturbed, aside from its missing crew. Not a single person, alive or dead or undead, could be found, despite everyone's personal belongings still sitting undisturbed where they had been left. Even little things like valuables and piano music were right where they should have been. It was as if the crew had simply evaporated. The strange case of the disappearing crew of the merchant ship Mary Celeste is not only the most famous maritime mystery in history, it is the episode which served as midwife to the Bermuda Triangle hysteria. How did everyone just vanish? Ghosts? Aliens? Sea monsters? Dimensional vortex? Dr. Andrea Sella, a professor of chemistry at University College London, created a replica of the Mary Celeste's holdback in 2006, just so he could find a MacGyverish way to blow it up without leaving a single sign of fire. He simulated a leak of the ship's 9 barrels of alcohol and found that once the vapor was ignited, say by a pipe or a spark, it created a pressure wave type of explosion. There was a spectacular wave of flame, but behind it was relatively cool air. No soot was left behind, and there was no burning or scorching. It appears the missing crew were so utterly horrified that they piled into the ship's lifeboat without any useful things like food or water, eventually sinking or dying of thirst and exposure. Number 4. Finding the USS Indianapolis. In 1945, the sinking of the USS Indianapolis led to the greatest loss of life from a single ship in U.S. Navy history. The cruiser was on a classified mission to deliver parts for the Little Boy atomic bomb at the U.S. Air Force Base at Tinian. Afterward, the ship entered training duty but was soon torpedoed by a Japanese submarine on its way to the Philippines. Of the 1,196 crewmen aboard, only 316 survived. The ship firmly entered pop culture with the release of Jaws, in which Captain Quint, depicted as a survivor of the Indianapolis, told the memorable story of how the men who went into the water were preyed upon by sharks for 4 days before being rescued. As for the vessel, it sank in just 12 minutes before sending a distress signal, resting on the bottom of the ocean somewhere between Guam and the Philippines. Over the last 2 decades, 2 expeditions tried and failed to find the wreckage using modern technology. In 2016, a new lead emerged when records showed that the Indianapolis passed by another ship 11 hours before being attacked. Using the other vessel's known route, a new expedition bankrolled by Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen estimated the location of the shipwreck. Over a year later, they finally found the USS Indianapolis in the North Pacific Ocean at a depth of 5,500 meters, 18,000 feet. Number 3. The Flight of Barry Troy. On February 25, 1958, Lieutenant William Thomas Barry Troy of the Royal Canadian Navy was flying an F-2H-3 Banshee jet to the Naval Air Station in Mayport, Florida. However, the 29-year-old pilot fell out of his 4-plane formation and was never heard from again. Although he was presumed dead, all that was ever recovered was his helmet and a wheel from the aircraft. In 2017, Hurricane Irma became one of the most destructive storms on record, causing over 100 fatalities and tens of billions of dollars in damage. Another thing it did was to help elucidate the 59-year-old mystery of Lieutenant Troy's disappearance. A park ranger from Florida's Hanna Park saw a pile of debris wash ashore. Upon closer inspection, he noticed it contained a parachute rigging with the words Lieutenant P. Troy inscribed on the harness. Most likely, the chute had been buried under sand dunes for decades before being brought to the surface by the hurricane. It appeared that the parachute was never deployed. No human remains or substantial pieces of plane wreckage were found, so it's still unclear if Lieutenant Troy's plane crashed in the same area. Number 2. The Mystery of Blood Falls. In 1911, geographer Thomas Griffith Taylor came upon a curious course of water flowing from the tongue of the Taylor Glacier in East Antarctica. It earned the name Blood Falls due to its ruddy color, which puzzled scientists for over a century. Initially, people believed the coloration was due to red algae. However, this was disproved, and researchers realized it was iron oxides that turned the water red, although they weren't sure how or why until 2017. A joint study between Colorado College and University of Alaska Fairbanks used radio echo sounding radar to discover that the waterfall was connected to a large source of briny water, which could have been trapped under Taylor Glacier for over 1 million years. Due to the high concentration of salts, the 91-meter, 300-foot path of brine stood out well against the fresh ice surrounding it. However, researchers were astounded to find liquid water at all, something they thought impossible inside an extremely cold, icy mass. In fact, Taylor Glacier is now the coldest known glacier to have persistently flowing water. Number 1. Solving America's oldest unsolved murder. In 1607, Jamestown, Virginia became the first permanent English settlement in the Americas. For the last 2 decades, it has also been at the forefront of colonial America archaeology, since the Jamestown Rediscovery Project led to the reveal of the ruins of the original James Fort. Originally slated to last only 10 years, the venture has been prolonged indefinitely due to the continued discovery of new artifacts and knowledge. Part of the findings in 1996 included the skeleton of a young man given the designation JR-102C. He had been shot in the right leg, and the lead bullet was found alongside the remains. His 400-year-old death became an unsolved murder. It took over 17 years since his rediscovery, but in 2013, forensic archaeologists announced that they had identified not only the victim, but also his killer. They believe JR-102C was shot in a duel as he was hit in the side of the knee, suggesting he was positioned sideways. Based on records and other evidence, researchers named George Harrison as JR-102C and a merchant named Richard Stevens as his killer. The two took part in a duel in 1624, in which the latter shot the former in the leg, with Harrison subsequently dying of blood loss. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoy the video, please let me know by clicking the like button. Do share, write a comment, and don't forget to subscribe so that you can catch up my next video.